I would recommend to any artist, no matter what field they're in, if they can become a tattoo artist, it will make every bit of other kind of genres of arts they do so much better. It enhances all your other work.
Welcome to Amusing Jews, where we celebrate Jewish contributors and contributions to American popular culture. I'm Jonathan Friedmann.
And I'm Joey Angelfield.
Producer-engineer Mike Tomren is working somewhere behind the scenes. Amusing Jews is a project of Adat Chaverim, Congregation for Humanistic Judaism, the Cool Shul Jewish Cultural Community, and Atheists United Studios. Hey Joey, you've probably heard differing opinions on Jews and tattoos. For those who follow strict Jewish law, tattoos are a no-no, based on an ancient prohibition against adopting practices of idolaters, some of whom apparently mark their skin in devotion to their deities. Others avoid tattoos because of the involuntary tattooing of concentration camp prisoners during the Holocaust. But many liberal Jews, both secular and religious, have embraced tattooing as a means of self-expression and, in some cases, a way to honor their ancestors who were tattooed by the Nazis. These days, it's not uncommon to see tattoos of Stars of David, Hamzas, Hebrew letters, and other Jewish symbols. There are even Jewish tattoo artists, like today's guest.
We're delighted to chat with world-renowned tattooist Howard Teman of Teman Tattoo. He's also a prolific poster artist who has a series of lithographs depicting pop culture icons from film, television, music, comedy, sports, and more. He designed t-shirts for bands like Bon Jovi, Lynyrd Skynyrd, and Cypress Hill, and can be heard playing piano and percussion on the Guns N' Roses albums Lies and Use Your Illusion 2. Howard, welcome to Amusing Jews.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
As a young artist, you got involved with the rock and roll merchandising company Great Southern, designing t-shirts for major bands, including Great Southern's all-time best-selling world tour t-shirt for the Scorpions. How did you get involved in that?
I was in a band, and we were signed to Chrysalis Records. And a guy named Dana Strum, who is in that band, Slaughter, with Mark Slaughter, he just saw some of my artwork, maybe some of my postal work, and he introduced me to the Great Southern world. There was three big merchandising companies in the world back then, way before all the independent companies. So back then, three companies did all the tour t-shirt work. In New York, there was Brockham. In San Francisco, it was Bill Graham Presents. And LA was Great Southern Merchandising. And so once I got in, I did almost one or two t-shirts a month. And they paid like anywhere from like $400 to $1,500 a pop. And back then, that was the days when rent was $200. You know, that was back in 1985 or something. So it was a great gig for a struggling musician and artist.
What do you think it was about your art in particular that attracted that company?
I think I probably just thought like the people who were buying them, you know, just
Sure.
monsters and, you know, and big boob girls.
And big boob monsters, maybe?
Big boob monsters, of course.
Enjoying the show? Click like and subscribe.
I first met you at a street fair in Los Angeles where you were selling your amazing pop culture posters. I've got one of your posters behind me, and Joey does as well. And your poster, Rock and Roll Theater, which a friend of mine has hanging in her home, I read sold over 300,000 copies to date. These are extremely detailed illustrations done with rapidograph pens. So what inspired you to draw these images, and when did you realize it was a successful artistic endeavor?
Well, actually, that poster you're saying, the Rock and Roll Theater, it's probably sold almost 1 million copies. And I haven't been paid for all those, but I know, you know, I probably been paid 85 cents per poster from my distributor for years. And the numbers are up there. It's one of the biggest selling rock and roll posters. I started my posters by, I was stoned one day and I said, how cool would it be to be a poster? I was thinking about all the rock stars who OD'd and died, you know, in debauchery, their lifestyle. And I thought, how cool would it be to have them up in heaven, still partying like they were down on earth, like they never learned their lesson. That's the way they're going to go out, and they're going to live their life that way. So the reason they're that shape is because it's a pad of paper opened up, and I just went right across it and glued the two ends back together. And the reason I did the rock and roll theater was the first one was all the dead rock stars, and I tried to get them in their most partied out, like right when they died. Like there's a fat Elvis on there, and just everybody just looking as partied out as they could be. And then after I drew that one, I drew a few other ones. One for my dad with a comedy poster and stuff like that. But I felt I cheated myself out of making them look the best they ever looked. So like seeing Keith Richards looking as cool as he ever had. So that's what the rock and roll theater is.
As mentioned, you're also an accomplished musician. You've done sessions with A-list rock and roll musicians like Guns N' Roses. How did those opportunities come about?
I think it was all just being in the right place at the right time. I used to live in this big mansion in Laurel Canyon. It's right across the street from Houdini's mansion, right on the corner there. And I had two brothers, and we were all musicians. We used to all be in a band together called the Apes. And we had a guy named Sam Mann singing in front of us. So we were Sam Mann and the Apes. And we were all part of the, there's a guy named Ricky Rackman at that time who opened the Cat House. And we were at the first grand opening of that place. And it was like a group of probably like 300 rockers in LA that all went to that club on that night. And so just being part of the scene, and we would throw big parties up at that mansion, which was great because it wasn't really Los Angeles County. I mean, it wasn't the Hollywood police couldn't come up and raid us because we were in Laurel Canyon, which is the county. So they'd have to have sheriffs come up there. So we would play all day long, and you could hear it. We were all the way up by Lookout Mountain, and you could probably hear it all the way down to Sunset Boulevard because the canyon we would play straight, outdoor live concerts every, a couple months. And everybody was there at those parties. All the GR guys, the Faster Pussycats, all the bands, and all the girls. Yes, they were quite the scene. We would make the centerfold of the rock and roll magazine called Rock City News. Our parties would make the centerfold.
So how did that lead exactly to you getting on the album itself?
Just because we were mingling, at those parties, we'd all jam with each other. We see each other, and have bands at the Cat House sometimes, and everybody would it was a very incestuous pool of everybody just playing with everybody. So, and then Guns N' Roses was, we used to play with this guy named Wes Darkeen. He's a very amusing Jew. He passed away. He wrote a lot of the Guns N' Roses songs. He wrote "It's So Easy," "In the Garden," and all this, some of the big hits. He would have his 12 track up at our studio up in Laurel Canyon, and Axl would come over, and it's just kind of the rotating partying times it was a great scene. It's almost like we continued the Laurel Canyon thing in the 80s, 90s. They were in the 60s and the 70s, and we kind of got the 80s, the hard rock, the hair bands.
One of your rock and roll friends, Lou Bone of Art to the Bone, one of LA's original tattoo shops, sold your posters in his shop and then encouraged you to take up tattooing. Do you have any stories from those early days of apprenticeship?
I turned 40, and I should have been in that rock and roll, the after hours in the after hour, that poster, because I almost went a little too far. So at 40, I decided to go sober. So when I got sober, I bought a little motorhome, it's called a Toyota Schnook, and I lived in it for 2.5 years, saved up to buy a house, but I had to get a job. And just at that point, the owner, Lou Bone, called me up and said, "I just bought a bunch of poster racks, and I want you to come in and to fill them up with your posters." And actually, I heard later on that was a ruse to get me down there. He asked me to just to start working there. And he said, "You don't have to get an apprentice or whatever position." He goes, "I know you're a good artist, so I will show you the fundamentals of tattooing, and you could start up on your friends as soon as you're ready." And of course, he let me park my motorhome behind his shop. So I was there first one in and the last one out, 7 days a week, throwing myself at that new, job. And back then, that was before the recession and all that stuff. So money was flowing and people were spending a lot of money on tattoos. So I went from having nothing to like making $2,000 a week doing tattoos. It was amazing. So I was able to buy a house and everything. So Lou Bone really set me up. He was a good man. He was a good mentor and just an amazing tattoo artist as well.
Back in the old days, tattoos were maybe restricted or exclusive to certain types of people. And now it seems that everyone's into tattoos and, your grandmother's got a tattoo and your daughter has a tattoo, and it's not really a taboo anymore to have a tattoo, to coin a phrase. When did that start happening?
That's funny. When I was telling you about those days when the cat house opened up and all that stuff, nobody had tattoos really except for the real hardcore guys. And then you start seeing them pop up, like Motley Crue got sleeved. And I remember that. And everybody's like, whoa. I'm not sure how it just caught on, but it's a good thing, of course.
Good for business. Yeah.
I was on Ventura Boulevard in my shop for a while. And my biggest clienteles were women, sometimes in their 30s and 40s, just trying to like relive their youth or feel youthful again. Then now all the kids are doing it. They're doing their own stick and pokes, and you don't really get a lot of big full arm jobs anymore. You get like on girls, like little tiny ones everywhere. But it's great. You were talking about Jews with tattoos and stuff like that and all that stuff. My wife and I went to Israel. Actually, she wasn't my wife then. I actually proposed to her at the Western Wall when we were there, just out of the whim. But we went to Tel Aviv and we were bopping all around the place. And I couldn't believe how many tattoo shops were there. That was like 13 years ago. And they were really advanced tattoo shops. They weren't, they had like computerized everything, like way more advanced than the shops in LA. And I was blown away. So there is a big culture of tattooing in Israel. And it's great. Everybody's doing it now. And I like what you said also. I've talked to so many Jews about, you're not supposed to get tattoos if you're Jewish. You can't be buried at a Jewish cemetery. And somebody sent me an article about how that's such a falsity. It's almost like when you blow your nose in a Kleenex, you call them a Kleenex instead of a tissue. Kind of like that rule was, there was one of the biggest Jewish cemeteries in Brooklyn, in that one, or not Brooklyn, around Brooklyn, where there's that city where there's more dead people than alive people, the big Jewish cemeteries. The biggest Jewish cemetery made that law, or a rule, not a law. And everybody thought that was the law of Judaism. But there is no, I think it's just cemetery to cemetery. You can be buried in a Jewish cemetery if they don't adapt that policy. It's not like a rule or anything like that.
That urban legend has always kind of bothered me, because that would mean that all of your, Holocaust survivor ancestors with the tattoos would not be buried in a Jewish cemetery. I mean, give me a break. Put a critical thinking hat on and actually think about what this would mean if that were true.
Yeah, and also marking your bodies. That's why they say it. Like, there's not only one line written in any Jewish right. There's not in the Torah, not in Talmud or anything. There's one line somewhere that says, "Don't mark your bodies," and that's in the same sentence they say, "Don't cut your hair." And they're talking about marking your body with your God's names on them.
Yeah, it's very specific.
Yeah, there's specifically saying, don't put your God's names on you.
On your website, you've got a number of photos of you with celebrity clients, ranging from Jerry Seinfeld to Pete Rose to Sinbad to Louis Gossett Jr. to the late James Gandolfini. How did you become a celebrity tattoo artist?
I think it was just location. I was right there when I was working for Lou Bone for years. He was right across the street from Guitar Center, so you get a lot of the musicians coming in and actors as well, because it's right in Sherman Oaks. And then I opened my own studio on Ventura, right next to Art's Deli, so you got a lot of people walking by. I had in my front window, it said, "Teman Tattoo accepts walk-ins," and had a big picture of walk-ins.
Christopher?
Yeah, I was still waiting for him to come in, and he never came in. But everybody else, I saw paparazzi running down the streets. You pop your head out. Who's there? Oh, that's Angelina Jolie came into my shop one day because I used to have little candy machines by the door, and all of her kids came in, flooded in. She gave me $1, says you got change, and I kept $1 and hung it on my wall. Celebrities are a lot of fun. They stay pretty loyal to you if you do a good job as well. The funnest one I did also was that Pete Rose tattoo was great because it was his first tattoo, and he was also filming his reality show Hits and Misses because he just got married to this girl. So Hits and Misses MRS, and it's funny because I tattooed his son first and his daughter, and I tattooed his son a lot. He actually at one point got this huge. The worst place to get a tattoo is on your stomach. It hurts so bad. There's so many nerves there. And I don't know if I should be telling this story, but he took like a bunch of Norcos and passed out, and he woke up and he had a full stomach tattoo on, which you don't do. I mean, it is the most, even the toughest people can't get a stomach tattoo, and he got it. It was great. Tyler was his name. He told his dad that he has to come see me if he's going to get a tattoo. And the missus was already starting shit because said, I don't want him in here. So it was a big fight and everything. But he's a great guy. Charlie Hessel. He was great. He was on the phone with his agent because they were trying to get him into the Hall of Fame on that episode and all that stuff. He was a great guy. Tibby whipped out a wad of $100 bills. That's great. What you would think of tattooing celebrities was him all encapsulated into his persona.
Yeah, he tipped you out of his earnings from the gambling, I guess.
Selling his baseballs with his autograph on them.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. His guy was the same guy that OJ robbed. They were...
Oh.
So the guy that OJ came over to get his stuff, he's like the big Vegas hustler of sporting goods stuff. So... And that's an interesting story.
You described yourself as being addicted to tattooing skin. What are some of the major differences between drawing on paper and creating art on human skin?
That's a great question because I avoided tattooing for a long time. Like I told you, I started when I was 40, just because I was a big poster guy and I was doing well with my poster. And I figured, why would you spend all that time tattooing somebody's skin and they get up and walk away and you never see your thing unless you take a picture of it? It was so much better just to draw it on a piece of paper and print them up and sell millions of them, whatever. But then I started doing it and I was just blown away. It kind of sucks you in, and it's challenging, and it's just, there's something about it that is attractive to artists, I guess. It's really neat, and it's very rewarding because it's one-on-one, and you provide what they want, and they're very happy, and you change their life, and it's a celebration kind of thing.
And it's a one-of-a-kind canvas.
That's right. And every canvas is different, so it's challenging. And I would recommend to any artist, no matter what field they're in, if they can become a tattoo artist, it will make every bit of other kind of genres of arts they do so much better. It enhances all your other work because it's very challenging, and you really have to. And when you're at a street shop like I was at, you really have to listen to the person who you're tattooing for the rest of their life and peg exactly what the recipient wants. And you have to do it. It's really challenging, in other words, and you have to do it right. Otherwise, you're not going to last in the business.
You got a chai, the Hebrew word for life, tattooed prominently on your neck. Have you done a lot of Jewish-specific tattoos?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really known to a lot of Jews to be the Jew tattoo guy, but being that I was in Studio City, there are a lot of Jews there, and then they find out I'm Jewish, they're much more comfortable, and because I know the alphabet and everything. I was bar mitzvahed, and I know all the shtick. It definitely makes the Jews comfortable when I'm tattooing them. I'm doing one at the end of the month, and she looked at my Instagram, and she got very comfortable that I'm doing it. And I have an interesting story. So I don't know if you can see in my arm, it says Ayin Tov Lev Tov. And that was my first pretty much Hebrew tattoo I ever did, because I did it on myself. And I did it because my dad had passed away right around 40 when I started tattooing. And the rabbi, who is the new rabbi at our temple up in Redwood City, Temple Beth Jacob, the old rabbi was there for 40 years, and the new guy was a kid that used to be in my brother's bunk at Camp Arzim. And so I asked him, he said a benediction for my dad, like, that Ayin Tov Lev Tov, good eye, good heart. You go through life looking at life with good eyes, then you have a good heart. So I said, oh, that's great. Can you write it out for me? So he writes it out for me. I go to my shop, I just start working at it, and I tattoo it on myself. And then all the Israelis are looking at me going, that's wrong. It should be Ayin Tov Lev Tov, because I don't know if you speak.
Yeah, the grammar.
Yeah. So I thought that was even funnier, because my dad was a full-on comedian. He was the funniest guy in the world. So the fact that our rabbi wrote it out for me wrong, and then I tattooed it on me, and it was a comical comedy of error, if you will.
What's the best way for our listeners to follow up and check out your work, Howard?
You can go on my website, which is my name, howardteman.com, one word. Or you can go on Instagram as Tman Tattoo, TMAN Tattoo.com, or on Facebook, Howard Teman. Easy stuff. Or you can look up Tman Tattoo, which is T-Man Tattoo. And then you can find all my credentials on that. And there's lots of posters on there, a lot of risque ones and fun ones. And I'm doing one right now that the Museum of Death, who sells a lot of my posters, I have one called The Final Supper, which is the serial killers and mass murders of all times in the Last Supper setting, like the Last Supper. It's called The Final Supper. They sell a lot of those posters at the Museum of Death. And they asked me if I would please draw them a Charlie Manson poster. So that's what I'm working on now, and it's so much fun. It's called the Charlie Manson Family Circus. And it's due out soon.
Do you take like a humorous approach to these things and kind of distance yourself from the subject matter? Or how close do you get to the subject of Charles Manson when you're making your art?
Growing up in Laurel Canyon and back in the hippie days a little bit, still around, I just made it into a big spa ranch party, and there's not really anything disturbing in it. It just looks like a fun, big party that people had, and it's got all the characters in it. Yeah, I don't try to shock people that bad, and I'm not morbid. I'm actually I look at the humor side, of course, or just the human side of it all. I don't try to thrill people with just fantastic like stuff, just to shock people, but it's thought provoking.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Howard.
Yeah, man. I hope I didn't talk your ear off.
Not at all. And to our audience, now back to your regularly scheduled lives.
Amusing Jews is here to amuse you. If you like being amused, go ahead and click like and subscribe.